Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Vernon Richard Show. I am Richard.
Greetings, I am Vernon.
So, firstly, we'll start by saying thank you to everyone who has been listening, sharing, commenting, and we got some good interaction on YouTube, especially thanks to Ben and Owen, who commented and then replied as well, which is nice to see. Deb Sherwood was posting, which is amazing, about the pod. There's someone else, but anyway, I will remember. But thank you all for listening, sharing, and commenting. We really do appreciate it. Right. What should we talk about, Vern? Is there anything big happened this week that we're recording this?
We are recording this in the last week of July. You know, it's the week that the Olympics start. Did anything happen last weekend of any note, of any interest?
No, there was something about releasing on Fridays, and you shouldn't do that, and it can cause issues. We are, of course, referring to Crowdstrike and the outage associated with a slight problem, I guess. I'm not going to call it a bug just yet, but it is a bug.
It's the week after the week before. Last week, Thursday, you, dear listener, Richard and I, people of our ilk, we all knew what a kernel was, but our friends and family did not. But as of Thursday, they sure as shit did now.
Yeah.
Goodness me.
So I don't think we have to explain it. I think our audience will be very much aware of what Crowdstrike is.
We should. I think we should, just in case. Just in case. I think we should.
All right then. Yeah. Do you want to give it a shot? Seeing as you're volunteering for that.
I don't know if I understand it. I don't know if I understand it well enough, but I'll definitely give it a shot. Here we go. So we have Crowdstrike, who are a cybersecurity company. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
They had an update that they had made to the kernel of the Microsoft Windows operating system, and this update was deployed and released, at least as far as UK time was concerned, I guess Thursday evening.
Yeah, I saw a comment from a guy in New Zealand said they got it Thursday night. So that whole meme about, don't release on a Friday, it looks like it actually went out Thursday night.
It went out Thursday night. And sadly for Microsoft and particularly Crowdstrike, the kernel update had issues which caused many Windows machines to blue screen of death. And mini tangent, I realise I haven't seen a blue screen of death in actual years. So that was interesting. So what that meant, as at least in the UK, what that meant for UK folks is checking in at an airport became very, very difficult. If you had a doctor's appointment, the medical professionals and practitioners couldn't get access to your notes. If you were doing any banking, that's not happening. In the branch in particular, I think things were pretty terrible. And even the powerhouse of Sky News and Sky, I think they were completely down for several hours. Like, there was no Sky News. So you couldn't even go to Sky News to find out why there was no Sky News, because there was no Sky News. You had to rely on other news channels, social media, and all the rest of it. So this was extremely bad, and that was just in the UK. And then it suddenly dawned on all of us, because we're each experiencing this, in our locales, and it suddenly dawns on all of us that this is a global issue and it's bad. The impact is large, and that's what that's what Rich and I want to talk about. It'd be weird not to talk about anything else. You're probably listening to this because of our release cadence. You're probably listening to this about 50 years after it happened. So hopefully you remember what it is that we're talking about. Yeah,
well, I think
the Crowdstrike released July 2024.
So given what you were just saying, there's some stats that we can look at now. So Microsoft Analytics claimed that it was 8.5 million devices, which is obviously a lot. And
is it though? How many devices in total could it have affected? That would be an interesting thing to find out, right?
Well, the vice president of Microsoft said it was 1% of Windows machines worldwide.
Imagine that. 1%.
But obviously, you need to be on a Windows machine. I think it was certain versions, and you need to be a CrowdStrike user and accepting CrowdStrike updates. So, there's a lot of factors that would have resulted in you getting that corrupt file or not. But yeah, that I agree with your explanation. I remember waking up and seeing this news and going, it's probably not that big. And then it kept coming and kept coming. And then I was like, my usual go-to with things like breaking news, go on to Twitter and see, if that's actually people are talking about it there, and it was all people were talking about.
Yeah.
There's an explanation that I've just mentioned to Vernon before we started recording by a guy called a YouTube channel called Dave's Garage. He's an ex-Microsoft developer, and he explains it so well. Like, he taught me things like, see, you were talking about blue screens of death, right, for Microsoft. Yeah. And he was like, and then he went, on Linux, it's a black screen, and on Apple, it's a pink screen. And I was like, I've never seen a pink screen of death. And now I kind of want my MacBook to crash because I want to see.
Oh, no. Why did you say it out loud, Rich?
Touch wood. But yeah, and then he was explaining, so like you said, a kernel bug. And then on his video, something that I found quite interesting was he spoke about the process of getting a kernel-based application, because he explains that most computers have two rings, as he called it. You've got ring 0, which is the kernel. And you've got ring 1, which is usually the operating system. And in order to get your software onto the kernel, you have to be approved by Microsoft. And that process, he basically explained it as not being instant. It could take any amount of time. But the way that some of these tools get around it is by getting the driver approved, but then using config files, which basically, this is the bit I found fascinating. The config files basically have the app in them. Like, in essence, those config files are the source control of the app. And yeah, obviously that file, from what I've heard since, basically that file contained just all zeros, which caused the kernel to trip out. And then in this video, which I'll mention to you as well, which again I found makes sense in my head, but he was saying as soon as the kernel detects an error, it has no choice but to shut down, because if memory starts getting erased and rewritten, like, you could lose files, operating system, everything. And so he says the kernel literally has no choice but to halt. Like, it's the safest thing to do, which in my eye, I'm going, some sort of exception handling, you could do this, you could do that. But it does make sense that you are risking the whole system. So you have to kill it.
Well, I guess I'd never, operating system code is not my forte, but I do know that the kernel is it's pretty much the lowest level. It's the interface. It's the thing that controls the communication between the software and the hardware, right? So your operating system communicates with the kernel, and the kernel will go off and do stuff, I don't know, allot memory and actually send the bits to the printer and receive them back again and all the rest of it. Communicate with your network card or whatever. It actually does all of the heavy lifting. So if that goes to crap, to Rich's point, you got absolutely nothing. Like, it's game over.
Yeah.
Like, good luck. God bless. We wish you well.
But yeah, watch that video if you're interested, because he's very good at explaining things, and it's definitely worth a watch.
They've also released an update on their website, Crowdstrike, so we'll put that in the show notes too, as of the 20th. I don't know if there's been one after that. Let's have a peek.
Well, there was the news.
There is.
Yeah. Have you seen the news for today, the 4 hours ago on the BBC?
I have not, no. What does that say?
The headline is, CrowdStrike to improve testing after bug causes outage.
Well, that really brings us to I guess, what we wanted to talk about, or, discuss some of the things that we've seen online, etc., etc., etc. Is this, because obviously now, once again, in this ever interconnected world, and this world where we're dependent on lots and lots of software, when something goes wrong, software testing is back at the forefront of people's minds. in the software business if it wasn't before, and it's definitely in the forefront of civilians, shall we say, non-nerds, non-software people. And they'll be invariably thinking, well, how did this happen? How come this wasn't tested, and etc., etc. I mean, I guess we're going to get into some of these hot takes, right? Because I think we both found them a little bit irritating.
They're not tested one.
Let me not, lead the witness. What did you see on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, Rich? And what did you make of what you saw online when it comes to explanations and people's opinions and thoughts on this situation?
It doesn't matter the scale of the outage or any software thing, right? You're always going to get people who claim, that should have been tested. Why wasn't it tested? I would have found that issue. That wouldn't have happened at my company, right? Because we do A, B, and C and D, right? And it's all, if, buts, maybe, and hearsay, right? Because we don't know, like, we're learning more now, right? And we're recording this a few days after, and we're getting a few more details, right? But you don't know what was done. It's unlikely, given the nature of the bug and what I'm hearing about what that file actually contained, that, someone found the bug, right? It's clearly, but we don't know how that file is built. Is it actually written by someone, or is it generated by software? Because it's kernel level code, right? Is someone really sat there writing that, or have they written something much higher level that's been churned out as code? Don't know. But that's the thing, we don't know. So just the argument that always annoys me about was it tested is every single one of the people that were saying that have probably had a bug that they've tried to get fixed or like advocated for, let's use the proper language, right? And someone on the team or a stakeholder more important than you has gone, no, we're not fixing it. And how do we know that didn't happen, right? Or whatever upstream issue caused it, we don't know. So just it irks me and annoys me that when people say I would have got it, and like there might be a chance you would. We don't know, but it's not a guarantee. And it's not happened because someone hasn't tested. It's happened because the processes in that company are clearly not good enough for the types of risk that they could create, or they've never thought of this risk. It's never come up before. It's never happened. And unfortunately, it's come and it's shown its face in a catastrophic way. But it shows a shortcoming of the overall processes, not the lack of testing.
So even what you said there, I mean, I think really and truly, we're all on the outside looking in. And we might be looking in rather closely because if you worked at a company that was impacted by this, you also had a very tough few days and might still be having a tough time. But ultimately, could be the process. It could be a whole host of things. I think at this point seems like a nice moment to read out your LinkedIn post that was on this topic on the day. So I'm going to read this out and I'll include this in the show notes. So here's Rich's post. So Rich said, it's okay to release on Friday. It's okay to not think of a test idea. It's okay, not ideal, but okay to have production issues. They are inevitable. What's not okay is to blame the testing, testers, the people. What's not okay is to say something was tested when it wasn't. What's not okay is not to improve and learn from our mistakes. What's not okay is to not own the problem. Maybe it wasn't tested because they didn't think of such a scenario. Maybe it wasn't tested. Maybe it was tested. The issue was found and management/team said to ship it anyway. Maybe they misunderstood the risk/impact of the known issue. Maybe they don't have enough quality gates in place. Maybe it did get released to a subset of users first and no issues were found. Maybe they rolled it out to everyone all at once. A lot of ifs, buts, and maybes. So what really matters is how the company responds to this and how its leaders help their people to do better work in the future, to avoid a similar issue, and how they continuously look to improve their ways of work and delivery. How they work with their customers to help them right now and also work with them to improve, to avoid similar issues in the future. And that was a pretty good bloody post. I remember seeing that on Friday because the post I put out, first thing I thought about was hug ups to people at Microsoft and Crowdstrike because holy shitballs, that must have been horrible. And all other affected companies who are running on Microsoft systems or who have customers that running on Microsoft systems, hug ups to all of them as well. But yeah, that post was pretty much hit the mark for me. All speculation, all hot takes, and I don't think they were helpful. I find it particularly the thing that I find easily the most irritating in these situations is when other testers say words to the effect of, didn't they test it? I'm like, wow. If anyone should know, there are multiple reasons and explanations and, circumstances that can lead to bug occurring in production or anyone else. It should be testers. I find it pretty irritating when other testers say words to that effect, particularly for something as hideous and difficult as this. So yeah, I digged your post a lot, man. I liked it a lot. Who else have you spoke to about this? Because I had a very brief chat today with Mark Winteringham about this, and he had a very amusing post that he said he was going to make.
No, go on. I've only spoke to people.
I
only spoke to people at work. So yeah, go for it.
Well, hold on. Let me dive into the chat. Excuse me. Yeah, what we were, because Mark has just written a really, really great post. Actually, let me see if I can just get the name of that real quick. Where's it gone? Here we go. So Mark's just written a post on his blog called Quality Engineering, Digital Employees and Job Security. Definitely going in the show notes, and you absolutely should go read that thing because it was really, really interesting. And there was one section in there that pertains to this in particular. It was, it kind of was and wasn't about CrowdStrike. There's two bits of it that I liked. The first paragraph or the first section is around Gen AI and how it's going to impact testing. Go read the blog to see what that's about. But the bit I want to talk about now is a section called We Have Bigger Contributors to Job Losses. And so Mark and I started talking about how there have been a lot of job losses and people have had a lot of hot takes about why that is. And they're trying to say, oh yeah, it's definitely because of Gen AI. Like LLMs are causing people to get fired. Definitely, that's the reason. 100%. It's outrageous. How dare they, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And so he did a bit of, admittedly, it's not like super duper deep, thorough analysis, but he went and did some, went and looked at some data. And he came out with all these really interesting alternative explanations for why these job losses have happened. Things like the company going bust, or the company needing to return to profit, or losing funding, or pivoting, etc., etc., etc. Go read the blog post; it's excellent. And so I was having a bit of a grumble about people having hot takes about Gen AI, but they've positioned them as reality and fact when they're just hot takes. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with hot takes, but trying to say that your hot take is like some peer-reviewed, official opinion is a little bit of a reach. And then that's when he made his CrowdStrike remark. Because I said, yeah, it's just like the CrowdStrike thing. People are using it as a vehicle to push their already existing agenda, rather than look at things as objectively and curiously as possible. And then at some point, a little bit later on in our conversation, he said, I was tempted to put a joke video together about CrowdStrike that went along the lines of, the fix to this issue is it wouldn't have happened if I was there, because there was a lot of sanctimonious, oh well, you should have done this and this would have happened, and oh well, you definitely should have done this, and etc., etc. We all know what you should have done to fit, and you have no idea.
Yeah,
you can't say that. You can't say that. You just sound a little bit crazy when you say that.
And I think that ties nicely into so that post that I did, right, it got a hell of a lot of impressions, like 210,000 impressions, which is absolutely crazy. But the comments were also on fire. And even there, I was having to defend. I say defend, not defending, there was hot takes in there, right, that got to me that I had. Sometimes I don't respond to comments, but I was like, you know what, these are getting to me. And again, so I'll go through the common ones that came up. It's not okay to release on Fridays, Richard. It is not okay. You should not ever release on Friday. And that must have been at least 30, 40 people commenting about...
It wasn't just on your post.
Yeah, it wasn't just on mine. No, I meant in general, everywhere.
It's crazy.
And then number one, it was released on a Thursday. And then, the other side of it is, someone commented, when something like this goes wrong, right, this scale, and this is not the first, right? We know there's loads of things that have happened in the past. When it goes wrong, it's not a 1 day, 2 day fix, right? It's weeks. So yes, you don't want to be ruining people's weekends, and yes, the availability of people will be slimmer if things go wrong. But also, how many releases have Crowdstrike done this year with no issue? Right? Sure, we could go look at the release notes, right? I bet it's within the hundreds, right? They were all fine. So again, if you invest in your approaches to quality and testing and good ways of working, and you're mitigating the risks that you're able to identify, you release whatever day you want, because there's no guarantee that the fix. So if you release on a Tuesday and it's fucked, it might not be fixed by Saturday. So what day do you release on? You can't release. You can't release. It's just like you can never release, because each of those bugs could last for days, and then you're going to ruin someone's weekend. It's just stupid. Like, you release when you need to release, and there's 1,000 reasons to release. There could be critical reasons, legal reasons, people losing money reasons, right? There could be loads of reasons why you want to ship something, and you should just ship it as long as you've gone through your approach to quality, whatever that is. Doesn't matter what it is, whatever the company's approach is. If they've done what they say they'll do, and everything's okay as far as their own criteria, ship it. Like, the whole Friday thing, and there's people adamantly like defending it. Yeah, it's mad.
I was quite surprised to see the number of people saying that you mustn't release on Friday, and the passion with which they were saying it. I didn't realize that the feelings were that strong about it. So where I do agree with people with that statement is, teams and organizations in their contexts have decided that actually we don't want to release on Friday because of reasons. I think that that's cool. I think that's okay, and I think that's acceptable. It's the no, but like just the blanket statement of releasing on Friday is bad all the time. That's the thing. I was like, oh, that's wow. That's what I thought, because I think there are some companies and teams who have figured that out, and they've tried to make releasing on Friday like releasing on Monday. Like, it doesn't matter, we don't care, it's fine, it's going to be absolutely chill. But I can see where there is slightly more risk on a Friday, depending on the nature of your business, etc., etc. If you release on a Friday, but let's say you don't have any pager duty, any on-call set up, you're going to have a busy, maybe your e-commerce and your busiest trading day is Saturday, and the office will be empty, etc., etc. All of that, yeah, okay, releasing on Friday sounds, suboptimal and actually a bit daft. But the blanket statement, I'm not too sure about that one.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, again, like, I don't want to put everything under the umbrella of quality, right? But if that's your approach to releasing, that's your strategy, you have people on call, it's part of your ways of working, your customers are aware that might happen, then do it. Like you said, a blanket never release on a Friday. Like, what if all you're building is like a marketing website? That nothing bad's going to happen, no money exchanges hands, nothing. What's wrong with shipping that, on a Friday? And then there's also I love the rule of three, right? I got it from Jerry Weinberg. I don't know where it originates from, but like, he introduced it to me. Like, can you think of 3 reasons why it's good to release on a Friday? And it's like, well, imagine dropping a feature that makes people millions of pounds on a Friday. Imagine opening a new piece of software on a Friday when you're kind of a bit bored at work, and it's like, oh my God, amazing new feature. That's amazing. I can't wait to use it. Right? I can think of reasons why it's good. I can think of reasons why it could go wrong. But again, I can also think of reasons how to mitigate against that. And I can think of reasons why it would annoy me if I was on those teams. So yeah, like you said, the blanket no just does not make sense to me. I think yes, there's common problems, but I think as a team, you could easily mitigate those in a decent release approach. There's comments in there about rolling back, right? Again, I know the maturity that it takes a team to get to be able to roll back. But I've also worked in very complex applications where rolling back would be very, very difficult, like borderline impossible, that it's not worth the money. to even entertain building it.
Yeah.
So
You can either deploy a new version, like an actual version with a fix, or hot fix it, right?
Yep.
Are they the options? They're probably.
Or it depends on your app, right? It could be an app. You could turn the app off. Obviously, in the CrowdStrike, you can't, right? But again, this whole thing about never release, right? If it was, let's say it was a trading platform, right? You could literally have a kill switch and just log everyone out and turn it off whilst you fix it. Like, basically stop the users using it. I'm not saying that's a good approach, right? But like, it is, trading apps probably a bad example, right? But there is examples of software that we could just turn off. Like, if it was doing chaotic stuff. Rollback, hotfix,
So
patches.
Have you worked on, software that low down or embedded software or anything like that? Have you got an experience of working on that kind of?
No, unfortunately not.
We'll get Chris Armstrong on here. I know he's done some hardware stuff and some embedded software type stuff.
No, it was always on the list. Like I've done a little bit of hardware stuff on this little Bluetooth kind of proximity sensor thing that we built at O2. But again, it was no real. We weren't in control of that embedded software. It was kind of provided to us. But yeah, that was one of the takes that, blew my mind. And then you got the whole, what was else that the most common thing that came up was, again, clearly not tested it, right? That, we like,
it's clear.
Where'd you start with that one? And again, people saying adamant, concrete statement, but in the opposite way. There is definitely risk mitigation steps they could have taken to prevent this. In hindsight, yes. In hindsight, absolutely. But as a team at that time, we don't know. You don't know. You don't know if they did everything that they were thinking of. Maybe they sat there for weeks going through all the risks they could think of and mitigated every single one of them. You don't know. So in hindsight, yes, we can. I'm sure that's why I meant about fixing the process. And actually, just to go one step back, I'm actually quite impressed with how well CrowdStrike have owned it. And that's one of the things I put in my comment, that they need to own this. They did it. They need to own it. And I think that they have owned it very well. And they are talking about, reviewing their ways of working, which you would hope they would lead to improving it. But we just don't know that they weren't doing very good work in the first place. And bugs happen. We've all worked in teams where bugs have gone out the door. It happens. And like I said in that post, it's inevitable. And unfortunately, on the type of technology that CrowdStrike is, it's caused, a massive problem, which has led to the CEO being called to Congress. That was in the news today. So the Congress called Delta Airlines into to explain why they had so many flights cancelled. And obviously they were cancelling flights because of CrowdStrike. And then Delta have now called the CEO of CrowdStrike as a witness. So literally it's gone to Congress. There's talk about it being costing $5.4 billion worth of revenue, of only which 540 million was insured, they reckon. So this has cost those companies £4.5 billion. Which is obviously, stupid amount of money. And the thing as well, one thing, sorry, I've been talking for a lot, but and I've gone on many tangents, but the other thing that I've not seen anyone explicitly talking about, right, is yes, these blue screens happen, yes, these delays happen, right, but think about some of the things that would have happened to individuals. Imagine you were flying home for a funeral or a wedding, or someone was sick in the family. Imagine you're getting fined now for not paying your credit card bill on time, and now you've got to go through all that hoo-ha of whatever. You know what I mean? Imagine all the things that could have happened to individuals. The companies are fine; they'll recover.
Yeah.
But what's happened to individuals that were going about their day-to-day life that this caused them to be unable to do? They're not going to get any insurance money. They're not going to be recouped in any way.
It's as ever. It's the human impact that we're talking about here. And to go back to what you were saying before around what people should have done and the bugs and and this, that, and the other. It's, it's something that I've spoken about a lot in the past, and many other people, some of our peers, colleagues. There's behavior in the system that you can predict ahead of time, and then there's behavior of the system that emerges over time. And I have no idea which one of these two this is, but to presume that it was the predictable kind that could have, I'm talking about now, today.
Yeah.
What's the date? The 24th of, to presume that we have all the information, or even enough information, to categorically state this definitely should have been found ahead of time. I just don't think it stands up. I don't think you can say that and be credible yet. It might be true. I'm not even saying it's not true. I'm just saying, to converge on that conclusion now with the amount of information that we've got available, I am not buying that, man. To me, that's a reach right now. I mean, you might be right, but you're through luck, not through excellent analysis, I'd say.
And another angle that came up on the Dave's Garage video, which again I think is another take that's kind of being overlooked by people, is these channel files, right, that they were uploading are created and designed to mitigate security threats that are happening, right? So the way that they update the software is, I can't remember, I think I was telling you this offline, so I'm going to repeat it. And if I've repeated it and I've already said it, I'm going to edit it out. But Dave was explaining that to get a driver on the kernel level of Windows, you have to go through, he gave an acronym, but you have to go through a Microsoft process to get approved, right? That's not instant, is in his words, right? It's days, weeks. So every time you want to do a release, you'll have to go through that process, which is not going to work for a security-based tool. Because if there's a day one vulnerability, you need protected, right? So they had to come up with a solution, and that's what this is. That's what these channel files contain. So what Dave was saying in that video was, like, yes, this is bad and cause lots of blue screens, right? But what if they weren't patching that fix? What if hackers or criminals or whatever were able to get into your systems because you didn't have the latest protection from whatever vulnerability it was Crowdstrike were trying to protect their customers from? People got in there and did lots of malicious, stuff like that. So again, that's back to that idea about releasing on Fridays, right? There's another reason to release on a Friday. There's a massive vulnerability been found that is going to threaten literally full running systems and personal data and trillions of pounds. You have to release. You've got to protect your customers. You've got agreements and SLAs. You've got to get that, protection out there for that vulnerability as soon as possible. So I think that's interesting fact as well, this whole, how did it go wrong? Yes, it went wrong, but if they aren't releasing these patches, a lot more could go wrong. On a scary scale, and probably is going wrong every day anyway, right? We're all pretty confident that the government's hacking each other, right? And there's all sorts of stuff going on, and people are trying to protect against this, and it's gone wrong. But I've been really impressed so far with their response, and I hope that they continue the transparency with how they're going to go about improving. They've spoken about testing specifically, but I would love to see how they're going to go about doing that and what they actually share. What roles do they hire? What processes do they change? I hope they do share that. And I'd be interested to also hear what some of the companies are going to do to protect themselves in the future, right? Because that's another consideration here now. So
I'm glad you said that, because you just reminded me. I was talking to a friend of mine at work, shout out to Kunle, and he was telling me there are companies that he worked for in the past, like law firms, for example. And my wife is a solicitor; she has her own law firm, so this resonated with me. And he was explaining how the company that he worked for, they had a machine that was set up specifically to take updates of this nature. So if their systems, I'm doing air quotes for the people listening, not watching, if their systems needed an update of any kind, that machine is the one that would get updated first before everything else. And it would be deployed there and upgraded there and installed there and used on that machine for a full 2 weeks before any other machine gets that update. I guess in mitigation of situations like this. I thought that was really interesting. That's pretty cool. But again, it's not, Rich was just talking about there. What happens if it's some kind of, extreme security risk? Are you really going to wait 2 weeks to update your system and be vulnerable for 2 weeks?
Yeah.
It's,
And
swings and roundabouts. It's interesting.
I can think of two things that relate to that. So again, don't know why I'm in Jerry Weinberg mode today, right? But things are the way they are because they got that way.
Not wrong with that.
I don't know why I'm on a Jerry Weinberg mission today, but yeah, things are the way they are because they got that way, right? So that what you just described there is making me think that company, something like this happened to them, right? Because unless someone thought of that risk quite early on, it's likely that that exists for a reason, and that makes me think of the second one, which is there's always a reason for a sign. When you see signs that just make no sense, like there's a reason why someone's put that sign up, like something has happened
Behind the sign every single time.
Exactly,
baby.
and I think again here, they've been running for a long time, and I'm not aware of any massive problems, right, that they've had, but they've had a massive problem now. It's unfortunately for them, it's become global news. It's impacted millions of people. If not 10, more than that. And, I hope that they now, as I said on that original post, I hope that they now own it a lot going forward, as in terms of share why it happened, share what they're doing to protect themselves, and what they're going to improve in the future. Because there was also another post that I found, which is another one to hop onto the excuse bandwagon, but they let go a lot of their QAs like a year ago or something like that, when they had redundancies like a lot of big tech companies did, and apparently a lot of their QAs were laid off. I don't know if all of them. I've not done the due diligence. I'm just going off a few posts that I saw. But again, is that true? Maybe. Is that a problem? Not really. You don't need QAs or testers to have high quality software. It can help. It can also not help. So,
and I think my probably default bias position is we should have people who are very interested in testing on your team. It's pretty cool. But the fact of the matter is, it's not a prerequisite for quality products and quality services. It just isn't. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah. Is it sad that CrowdStrike let all those folks go? Absolutely. It's been pretty grim for the past, 2, 3, 4 years on the redundancy front, that's for sure. I think we've all been touched by it in some way, shape or form. But is that the reason for this happening at CrowdStrike? I think it's a bit too soon to say. On the owning part, following on from that, in terms of explanations, is it the QEs being let go? Is it this? Was it that? The other thing? They have a blog and they've been updating it keenly, from what I can tell. In fact, it looks like they've updated it just as we started recording, with an executive viewpoint. I don't know what that is. A preliminary post-incident review. Content configuration update impacting the Falcon sensor and the Windows operating system, in brackets, blue screen of death, BSOD. So I'm going to go and have a read of that after this podcast is finished.
I've got one last question, which is CrowdStrike a quality product?
Rich. What a question. Bloody hell. Now you've just tripled the length of the podcast with one fell swoop. I thought I was going to bed in about half an hour. That's not happening.
The reason I asked before you dive into it is simply, right, there's a lot of talk here about obviously testing, right? And obviously the product has caused the problem, right? But when we think about quality, and we've spoken a lot about the difference between quality and testing, is CrowdStrike a quality product?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. Sadly, I don't have an excellent answer, because I'm just in my head. I'm just going yes, no, that's it. Almost at light speed. I think on the one hand, you've got to say no, because the impact was absolutely bonkers in a negative way, sadly. But on the other hand, you got to say yes, because to your point, it feels like, based on what I've seen, it feels like they've been owning it. They haven't been hiding. Put it this way: there are good ways, and there are bad ways, and there are terrible ways of handling situations like this when they occur. So there's the whole set of events and circumstances that lead up to the event, and we can all practice HDD, hindsight-driven development, on that to our heart's content. But there's also happens after the event happens, and I think that reaction has been indeed quality. I think what your question and my rambling has made me realise is, on a much smaller scale, you have an interaction with a company and something goes wrong. Let's say you get to a hotel, your booking has been wrecked, they haven't got a room ready for you, etc., etc. That's definitely one thing, and you will definitely have an opinion about that. But what happens after that will determine your feeling and your opinion about the hotel or the restaurant or the shop or whatever, right? So if they say, unlucky Rich, there's a sports shop that might be closing in the next 10 minutes and they sell sleeping bags and tents, you can make your way down there and you can sort yourself out. Good luck, Mr. Bradshaw. Get out of my hotel lobby. Or they could say, Mr. Bradshaw, I'm so sorry. We will, it looks like there's a suite available. We'll upgrade you. Don't worry about paying the difference. It's on us. First night is free. Can we carry your bags? We'll have a masseuse waiting for you because it must be stressful. We'll serve you breakfast in bed tomorrow because it's been a long day for you. All this kind of stuff. They could make you feel. I hope they mess up my reservation next time because this has been amazing. And that will change your whole feeling about it. So, and I think that's where CrowdStrike is right now. How they handle and react to the issue is going to determine how people feel about them as a company. I'm not an economist. I'm not a finance expert. I'm sure the market has reacted in a predictable way. Suspect it's reacted. But I think going forwards, I reckon it'll be all right.
Yeah, because the thing that made me think of the question, so it's a cybersecurity company, right? To protect you against threats, right?
Yeah.
Well, if the computer's not on, there's no threats, right? So that's a quality product, right? You know what I'm saying? I know what I'm saying. Computer's not online, no threats.
CrowdStrike's playing 4D chess. That's what you think's going on here, right?
But as a product, it's product.
The computer's not working.
I'm just putting it out there. As a product, it's got to protect you from cybersecurity threats. It's been doing that. It's doing it. It was doing it, and then it went. You know what? I can't cope with all the cybersecurity threats. I'm just going to turn your computer off to give me more time to deal with it. So right, who knows? But yeah, I found that just that whole angle of quality. Just I find it really interesting. Without a doubt, people's opinion of them will be tarnished.
Yeah.
I feel it's one of those things where if you take a closer look. And I've not done this, but if you take a closer look, have they actually been bossing it? Like you said, right? We've not heard of any problems. Clearly, a lot of machines use it because 8 million machines. So clearly, they've been doing pretty damn good. But yeah, it's interesting that how you view and perceive quality. And I know we talk about value to some person, but it is interesting now what's going to happen and. See what comes off the back of it.
I just want to say real quick, one more thing, is that it affected 1% of the Windows machines out there. 1%. And this was the outcome. I think the fact that anything works at all is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know whether it's through luck or by design, or probably a majority of one or the other, but that's great. I was having this conversation with my wife actually on the day it happened. I was thinking, we're all so used to things just working that when it doesn't work, it's an outrage. I mean, this is a different category of doesn't work, I get that. But yeah, we're just used to things working. And you think about there's just software all over the place. Get in our car, software. We connect our phone, software. We get on a train, plane or automobile, software. Go to the bank, software. we're doing this podcast, more software, dishwasher software, dryer software. Do you know what I mean? Crazy.
It's everywhere. Yeah. I think I've said this in the podcast before, right? I remember, and I always need to look up the lady's name, but she was the CEO of Rolls-Royce, right? And one of the finest engineering companies, out there. And they were delivering a talk at Davos where they were explaining that they'd been asked to create an engine for Boeing that had to provide, I don't know, £80,000 worth of thrust. Right? So what they did is they designed an engine that could do £100,000 worth of thrust and limited it with software because they knew that Boeing are going to come in like 2 years' time and go, we want £90,000 worth of thrust.
Yeah.
And they can just tweak the software and go, boom, here you go. And then they basically said that we are no longer an engineering company. We are a software company. We are a software house. And it's never been more true. Like you said, software is everywhere, literally everywhere. Like cars don't work anymore without software in them. I don't know why, but I'm hooked on watching the YouTube people who, update the cars. Specifically, I watch Matt Armstrong quite a lot. And he hates working on BMWs. Because everything's software. He just wants it to all be mechanical, and yet he's got all these errors and complaints because some software's going, this isn't plugged in, that's not doing this, can't do that, can't start my car. And it's just it's insane how much software is, in something as, mechanical as a car.
Yeah.
It's mad. And yeah, I think, just to end, on a really positive high, I think we're going to enter an era where we're going to see more of this. Number one, a few reasons, and this is complete hearsay now, but I think there's so much software, so much interconnection. I'm not going to say testing here, even though people might hear me say testing. I'm explicitly not saying testers or testing. I don't think people are taking quality seriously enough across everywhere. I don't think there's enough people taking it seriously. I don't think there's enough programs in place to train people to take it seriously. I don't think there's enough tech IT people to enable companies to take it as serious as they want. I don't think there's enough time or money, or the system's not designed to have high quality products. I think there's so many things in it, but I don't think this is going to be. And also the other thing is, it's not the last. This happens every day, right? Just not at the scale. And I think this scale is because once it impacts individuals directly, and a lot of them, it makes the news, right? Because suddenly there's a lot of people tweeting, posting about, being stuck here, there, and everywhere, right? But, AWS went down, didn't it, for 8 hours, a couple of weeks ago, or 3-4 weeks ago, right? Didn't bring whole systems down, but brought large parts of them down. And obviously slightly different. You can fall back to a different cloud, and there's other ways of coping it.
Yeah.
But these bugs are happening more and more frequently. This is my opinion. This is my, no data analysis. But I honestly do think there was a few comments about it, and I don't want it, but people were talking about standards for certain types of software.
Okay.
But I replied saying, how do you categorize it though? So, you certain parts of a piece of software might be critical, right? So do you portion that part off as being the standard? And then the other bit, like CrowdStrike's, I don't know, help guides, right? Are they classed as critical? Do they have to go through a 4-week testing quality gatekeeper malarkey, right? Or do only certain changes over here need to go through that, right? So I get the concept and I get why someone would suggest it, but implementing something like that is so complex.
Yeah, it's hard, man.
Borderline impossible. So,
yeah, it's super hard, that. No, that was a good topic. Please give us your hot takes and opinions and views on this CrowdStrike situation. Were you impacted? Were you caught up in the stress of having to fix things for your systems or your customer systems, anything like that? Hope you've come out the other side. Share your war stories. We'll share some hug ups with you, for sure.
Absolutely. All right. So let's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
Cheers, everyone.